And we're off. Recording land.
I was watching the recording from last week and I was like, oh God. Goodness gracious. It's a level of self-awareness now, though.
That one was a little bit of a shit show.
A little bit.
Not in like a bad way, I don't think. We were just kind of in it.
Stop. Yes. So I uploaded the one from 2 weeks ago, and then I'm editing that one so it can be one file and sound good. But it was like, oh, yeah, there's a lot going on. I don't know. We could dissect that, or we could have a different approach today. I don't know if we need to do that right now.
Yeah. I mean, it was raw, right? It was just a raw call. Like no pre-scripted niceties there.
You want to do a check-in? You want to do a sync up? Is that one of these things?
Yeah. Let's check in. You have a preference of who goes first?
No. I'll go first. No. Yeah, I'll go first. We got this. Oh, this dog. I may take her outside if she's doing too much. So
okay.
I'll decide in a bit. Yeah, this has been the card lately, over and over and over again. Like
okay, makes sense.
It does. The lover is the heart, the beloved, the devoted. I'll hold up a little bit. Pulsing through the heart of the lover is gratitude. The lover appreciates and experiences the world through the senses, reveling in beauty, song, art, music, sense, and sensuality. This energy awakens at the tip of our tongue when we taste the sweetness of honey, kiss a lover, or speak gentle words to a child. The lover lingers in foreplay, aroused not by the getting there, but by the slow merging of self and other. This energy is usually experienced for short periods of time, as in order to feel it, you must be fully present and awake, with no expectations or rules about what should be. Rather, the lover is in awe of what the world presents, reveling in the glorious details, grateful to savor every last drop of life's offerings. When light, connection, expansion, devotion, awe. When dark, indulgence, attachment, obsession. The lover archetype is present everywhere, not just where conventional forms of pleasure and beauty are found. The lover's awe is unconditional. This dog. Yo, stop. Please, go. Over there.
She just wants to be a lover.
She's instigating. She's really good at that. So I'm gonna touch this.
Want some love. Justin's like, no, she's just a pain in the ass.
I try to love the instigation of I'm like, I'm gonna love you into oblivion. And she's like, no, I'm just gonna bite you until you flip out. I'm like, okay, fine, you win. My temper's, she tests all kinds of patients, talking about core wound, man. Because I know she doesn't think like a human, but there are things that are very interesting to watch. Like instigation, I feel like is a real expression of her. She will instigate things, she knows, but she wants you to do what she wants to. She wants you to follow her habit in order to accomplish what So like she wants a treat, you like sit. She's like, well, I'm not gonna sit. I'm gonna do this thing over here so that you go get a treat. So then I have to sit. I'm like, oh, it's just it's a handful. Uh, I'm not really a dog trainer either, so I'm like watching YouTube videos trying to learn how to be really aware of all the micro interactions that are creating these habits between us. It's intense.
Yeah.
That's not my check-in, but
Yeah.
that's part of it.
I mean, training dogs is really interesting, and I'm like no expert in it, but it's like you have to really step back from how you would interact with a human, because we're like, oh, but I just like I want to be nice and compassionate, and like that's not really how they want to interact and how they thrive in those interactions. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm the alpha, I'll just walk all over you.
And then dominance through aggression, like she like lists a lot of my shadow. Like a lot of my biological triggers go off when she's like in a state of when she's like in that mode of trying to alpha me. It just is very triggering inside my body, and I have to be really aware of my aggression because it's really about right patterning and less about like energetic oppression. Does that make sense? Like it's very. I'm trying to like learn the subtleties of that too. But yeah, this check in. This last week in my contemplation for the Delta, which is the Gene Keys group, it was about selflessness in speech. And so my contemplation was really around where am I selfish in my life? And what does selflessness look like? Particularly through like altruism, so giving from a place of from a right place, I guess, within you and within your orientation toward life. Yeah, I've been looking at like all the ways that so some part of me has been working really hard actually to be able to come to terms with naming what I want and and and, and not even having to like go out and get it as much as being confident or comfortable saying it, right? Like I want this, I want that. This feels good. I don't want this anymore. That doesn't feel as good to me. And standing in that place of like a personal power. And there's, hey, let's not do that. Hold on. It wasn't that much of a break point. It was more like I'm gonna put you on a bed with all your toys, be comfortable, and leave me alone. So it could be worse. Yeah. So I guess in all aspects of my life, I've been really looking at where am I? What does it mean to be selfish? Knowing that one form of selfishness could be to completely be subservient or subordinate in life, to others in order to for safety or to avoid conflict. There's a lot of shadow that can be kind of that repressive side, and then the reactive would be like more of that going out and trying to claim everything and completely missing your relationship to other people or energies in your life. And I think it's been like a journey or a process of taking kind of our conversation last week, which is around like the kind of core wounding and ways that it shows up, both in work and I think within myself, but also trying a different lens on, which is like, how do selfishness and something like impatience come about? Where, because of the pressures or fears around timing or things coming to me, do I feel like I need to act or take control or protect myself in a way that isn't actually serving what I believe I'm orienting toward? I'd say in my relationship, with Ka, it's been really fascinating too, because we're kind of at the lowest of low points, and even in this space, I'm telling him, like, I think, like, this is not the thing that either of us want, and it's not even feeling energetically of service right now. And there's like this commitment to something, a higher ideal, which I think is beautiful, like love. Unconditional love means that I'll never go away, or unconditional love means that I will endure the suffering or the pain or the discontent in order to show how true this is, which I think is a beautiful sentiment. Um, and I'm in this place of it's like, is it selfish to even try to accept something like that when it doesn't feel true? Can I look at my fears around love and acceptance and my value, my worth, and say, is this me? Is it me that really doesn't understand what's going on here? Is it my responsibility to orient toward this relationship in a way that where I become selfless in this? And yeah, I've just been looking at things like, I think my check-in is like, for a long time, I've had a narrative around my relationship to higher order principles, or like my relationship to the divine and the sacred, and my ability to communicate and work in and kind of have a reality that's deeply shaped outside of my material reality, which has been the practice is coming into my body and the realities of the environments and relationships I'm in, so that I can actually bring, all the things that I think are real here. And I guess I'm checking in with this interesting, I'll call it tension, which is like, recognize a wound, feel the shadow, look at it, have awareness of it, being with it, and seeing it through, and doing it in orientation to something that is invisible, possibly made visible in the material reality, and yet, according to what we think or how we talk, will have to be greater than or beyond any single expression that we may find in this like material form. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like where I'm at right now, which is like, I'm it's a sense that selflessness or peace or these higher order principles are things that require for me to be in relationship with source unconditionally, and and to meet each one of my relationships or the experiences that I'm in as a very real thing, and still have that selfless orientation to it, and yet to not be confused about what it is that I am actually choosing to be in relationship with. So this is kind of what's alive in this way, and this week has been um, bringing me down, and also I feel very comfortable in my being today, and yeah, that's me, and a lot of things.
Cool. That was quite the check-in. Thanks for sharing. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I'm just really interested to see where this goes today. Yeah, it seems like energetically there's still a lot up. Overall, I'm feeling pretty good. Things are pretty smooth in my world, but it's been interesting to witness like this kind of Venus in retrograde cycle, like wiped out 3 of my dear friends' relationships, just all some more messily than others. But yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's an interesting question. What you brought up, right at the start was this question of like what you want. And that's actually, it's like a challenging question to answer. One of my friends, like I did a hypno journey for her, and she was like, hey, like for reciprocation, like tell me what you most want in the world and I'll like meditate and pray for it. I was like, okay, that's nice. And I sat with that. I was like, fuck, I don't know. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then she reached out to me and she was like, hey, you never told me what you like most want in the world. I'm like, fuck, what do I most want in the world? And it's a really difficult question. I don't know. There are things that I want, and I don't know if there's something that I most want. But yeah, that's my check-in.
So what I'm feeling is that we're orienting toward the north, and I'm noticing like a trend or a pattern in the or like a potential here, which is like around that kind of wants and desires, and even the idea of manifestation in the world. And because if I remember correctly, like the wheel, so you come into this relationship with this this ethos, which is it may be able to be embodied by a single form, like a single person, but oftentimes it's at least archetypal, if not even kind of beyond the archetype. It's prior to the archetype. And yeah,
Sorry, is something going on in your house, or is that your Zoom? Like it's
I
like
don't know.
flashing blue.
It's probably trying to adjust screen. Let me turn off brightness or something like that.
Okay, whatever you did made it stop. Sorry, it was just like, it was annoying. It was like, the whole thing was like.
It was mood lighting for my. Yes, so you have this higher order principle. It comes in a form, and that could be archetypal forms. It could be literal, like a product. It could be whatever the things are. And by coming from that like larger than form ethos or essence, in coming into form, there's like a wound that's created. And so there's a relationship that comes, this ethos and form comes into relationship with this wound and is able to potentially turn that wounding, the relationship of the wounding, or the practice of understanding or being with that, into purpose in some way. This is how I'm kind of rough summarizing. And what I remember from the first day or two was like, the next thing was like, okay, taking that purpose out into the world in some way. And people may not ever know what your wound is, and they may not ever really understand what it means for you to be in form. Like, to actually understand the form of something is a very particular decision to study that about, like an organization or a person or a product. Most time it's taken by the outside in that kind of utility, service, external facing way. Does that make sense? Is how I'm kind of thinking about it right now. Like it's yeah. I'll get to my point, and then maybe which is that I feel like the thing that you want, or the thing you're trying to manifest in this process could be one that is almost critical to define, especially in relationship to how what is in form meets its directional opposite, which is the way in which the form is received by like the appearance, or the transpersonal form, right? It's the public form. It's the way in which it is perceived or received or taken in by once it's left kind of this internal aspect of the cycle. I'm kind of losing myself, but I guess what I'm trying to put up as context for today is what happens in the North. I think it has to do with desire or wants and manifestation. And I think there's some like ways to approach that there are qualities about form, and there are qualities about how our ethos came into, what the wound of our ethos was, and the purpose that was defined. I think there's a way to move into maybe even naming a want here, or speaking into some type of archetypal dream that orients toward external manifestation. So a progressive step beyond just the container or vessel itself. Yeah.
So, it's interesting, right? Because I was reflecting on this kind of in preparation for this call. And, I don't totally understand, the North in this cycle, right? Like, it's kind of always been, okay, like you get your ethos, like you figure out like why you think you exist. And then you go into form, you create something with that. And then, hey, that creates wounding. So then you go into the wounding, and then you go to the North and something happens, and then you go back to ethos, right? It allows you to have a deeper understanding, right? And, that's not exactly how I describe it, but there's a certain like lack of like understanding what the hell happens in the North for me. I think part of it is, our relative youth and naivete, right? North is the place of the elders. And so, I know all these archetypes, like I know the archetypes that are in the North, right? It's like, okay, well, it's the elders, it's the guides, it's like the ancestral wisdom, it's going into the, going into the underworld, dying and being reborn, right? There's the North Star, right? So there's all these archetypes that live in the North, and I'm not sure what the process is. But it's also like what I've noticed during this thing, right, is like, well, there's this seems to be a natural process, right? And so we're kind of like scaffolding a little bit, but we're actually like naturally moving through this. Just somehow, right? Because it is a natural process, right? It was like last week before we like stated that we were talking about wounds, we were both just like, oh, wounds, right? We're like, and then we're like, what are we talking about this week? Oh, right. Like, if we look at the process, we're looking at wounds, right? And yeah, I mean, so it seems like we've naturally started off each meeting by like kind of checking in, and what's been up has been what's come up has been the process. I think it's interesting that we both kind of connected with and spoke to this, like, what are you wanting, right? And it was interesting, right? Because when I spoke about it, like I felt myself getting like emotional and kind of like even like maybe a little bit of shame around what I'm not entirely sure, but like maybe like owning that power and like saying, hey, there is something I want in the world, or maybe there is something like I already know it, right? And it's like I already know it, but I'm like covering it up and pretending I don't, and being like, no, I'm not looking at that because because of my wound, I'm really ashamed of what that want is.
Yeah, I feel the relationship between my wound and my want, and I feel I'm watching how there's almost like this unconscious drifting that happens for me, that feels like receptivity, but also in some ways it's like it's not like the empress or the queen who's like sitting on her throne and receiving all that she wants. It's like the wanderer, or like the seeker still. There's like a lack of authority or power in the way that the receptivity is coming about. Not always, but I can kind of I can sense the difference in myself. And one of the messages I heard a lot this week was like consistency, which is like there's something in my nature, that my impatience, or even my understanding of timelessness, that is often means that right before things are going to actually be made manifest, I will give up on them or quit them. and I'll lose track of what the actual want was. So I'll have clarity or comfort. I'll be really, really solid. And then over time, that it gets weathered really easily, or it gets weathered over time. And this weathering process is actually probably, I don't know if it's part of creation, or at least my relationship to how things are created right now. And I watch how I just, I don't get there. And that pattern has probably been so ingrained of wanting something, being very clear, naming it, maybe even naming it out loud and publicly, and then um, losing out or not seeing it through to its end for whatever reason that may be. I can call it impatience, but I can also talk about how resilient one has to be in a creative process. Or if you're doing the creative process wrong, there is like a natural flow that would happen. And also it could be like, I could imagine how some creative processes are built in a way where they never actually get to the gold. They never actually get to the thing that you want. And so I'm just watching myself how do I have a fear of saying what I want? And do I guess I wonder too, what would it be like to with all the things that I know now, leaving all past story behind and external systems, do I know how to manifest or bring about or receive what it is that is for me, expressed through a statement of want? And I don't even like the word want that much. It feels a little bit too like, doesn't feel quite right. So I wanted to like a better word for that.
Desire, a better word.
Also has like a weird negative connotation to it. I was trying like ethos and form are kind of words we're claiming. Wound is just a word, but it kind of has like it can also be claimed in a way where like I imagine in time we may start to really find a unique way in which that's part of the process that we're seeing. And I just am holding it up because a want feels like it doesn't feel very like a queen, right? It doesn't feel like it has the patience and the surrender and the authority in it. It feels something different. So I feel like there's like a word or a phrase that really speaks to that. To not know how it's going to come about necessarily, and to be in a state of empowered surrender, so much so, our relationship with like the divine, in a way that you can trust yourself and trust the process of that life is bringing to get you for that to like be able to come to you, to be able to receive it as you move toward it, which is kind of why I think evolution was interesting, because evolution is like, it's not quite the right word, but it's like there's a response and a deep relationship with life and a deep surrender to life in a way with evolution, right? Because it's like the life is meeting you in involution, and you're adapting and changing and optimizing in order to meet it. And so there's this relationship between the divine and the individual. Or there's this there's the infinite nature of life, which means that your form has already been evolved in some way. But the process itself of actually evolving to reach that ultimate state, which let's say within our kind of more new agey proud, but also very real, is like our oneness with the universe, right? We're evolving to be able to even have the capacity for a consciousness that can experience that. And we have to do that through material or embodied form, because this is how consciousness is discovering itself through like senses or through the thinking mind. And all the time, it's constantly giving us grace or coming down to meet us in a way that gives us a sense or of what is possible, and helps to smooth off the edges from the roughness of the creative process in a way.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the right word will reveal itself. I mean, I don't feel too stuck on it. So I mean, if you had to take a stab at it, what has, the wounding process with patients revealed about this, deeper desire you're evolving into?
It's like, I don't quite know how to answer that. I'm like,
It's a really challenging question.
yeah, yeah. I guess kind of, I have this, I'm watching this like almost like emotional experience as I'm touching at that space in me. And it's like, I don't think that it's possible to have a timeless experience in time and space. Um, which is why patience is so important here, because patience is this acceptance and a surrendering into the reality of existing in form and time and space. And yet I think there's still a way to be in direct experience of the timeless nature of my being, and that as a as a as a as like a an expression of something that I don't have a word for yet. Like what I'm kind of noticing myself is like, when I look at my wants and my desires, it's like some people don't think they have purpose. I'm like, I have purpose. And it may shift or change how I understand it, but like there's no doubt in my mind. Or like I know that I'm here to do something. And it's not like one moment in time, maybe it is, but I think it's more about like the way this life is expressed and its willingness to go to some place for, like, in service to humanity as a whole. And that place I'm going is not always that clear either, but I can feel that, and I can meet that in the way and the patterns and the experience of my present moment as well. So what I'm kind of feeling is like, it's just this is like this feedback I keep hearing, which is like, who are you in relationship to in this life? Like the rebel card I got yesterday was like, in this world, but not of this world. And listening to one of my favorite readers yesterday, she was like, maybe, just maybe, your divine partnership is with Source. And you're doing all this searching and seeking for the thing that is fulfilling. And the thing that you're seeking literally is one seeking you, is literally with you right now. And you have to get to a place where you're able to embrace that relationship. And it sounds, so when I think about the question of like what my wound has brought into me, it's like, for me, it's like deciding what I am committed to. I want to be committed, and I want to be committed to the thing that I see. How do I put this? Like, I want to be like an embodied, embodied expression of Source in the world, right? It sounds like not literal, but it's like through that intimate, timeless relationship and connection, I believe that I can continually or step more fully into a patient life, because some type of void within me is filled in a way that nothing that I've met in the material can do. And yet the intention is to come into a deep relationship with the material, because that is like my service to Source. Is to do what only a human being can do for consciousness, and to do it as only this form can do. But that commitment to that relationship feels like it's a foundational, or maybe it's something that I felt has lacked in my foundation, and therefore everything that has been attempted or tried has been by has been hasn't had the source of energy that was necessary or needed to even to honor the ethos that I'm in relationship to. I don't know. These are just, it's kind of me working with that.
I mean, I think I can, it's interesting, right? And because this is so raw, it's hard not to talk about it in general terms and archetypally, right? Which is just our natural tendency. And it's okay, because we're learning, and we're exploring, and we're doing this thing. But in thinking about mine, right, as I started to kind of think about it a little bit, the piece I think tied it together was actually bringing in the ethos, right? Bringing in my ethos. which you kind of started to do at the end there a little bit. And I remember yours is like, you know, presencing human connection, right? And it's like, oh, okay, like there's something very timely and material about that ethos statement. And so that doesn't seem accidental. But I'll let you speak to that. Let me just kind of run through what I was reflecting on mine briefly. Is that so? Like looking at mine, like, you know, intolerance to tolerance to understanding, right? It's like in reflecting on that over the past week, it's like, you know, at the most basic level, it's like an intolerance of self, right? Like all intolerance manifests from an ultimate intolerance of self, right? If you totally accept yourself, you know, there's nothing to be you know, there's nothing to be intolerant about. And so, you know, I think like for the most part I am of myself, but there is actually like, you know, sitting with it and noticing it's like this deep kind of fundamental intolerance that I do feel, right? You know, non acceptance. And looking at my ethos statement, right? Because it's like to a certain degree, our ethos like statement helps elucidate like what our desires for ourself is, right? We're like, oh, this is what I want to go help people with, right? This is what I want to go help people with. It's like, oh, okay, that's like what you really, you know, that's illuminating to what you really truly deeply want for yourself, right? And like, so my ethos statement is about awakening possibilities in others so that they may live their most full and complete life, right? And so for me, it's like this wound is uh this wound is around accepting myself, right? Being you know, stepping into fully accepting myself, and that saying, okay, this deepest, corest part of you that you don't really accept and are afraid to show because you're so afraid of that being rejected, you know, and called unworthy because you think it's unworthy, or I think it's unworthy, you know, stepping into accepting that piece and giving that piece permission to create and say that this is my desire, this is what I want to create in the world, this is how and who I want to be in relationship with, and owning those pieces, and because that is like the corest, deepest, most powerful part of myself, but it's the part of myself that I don't accept and don't feel is worthy, right? And intellectually I can see like, well, yes, of course, like that's where the true power is. That actually is the most worthy part of yourself, but I don't feel it.
Do you know what it is that you want from that place? Or from that, what would it be that you would, could you, um, in the process of learning how to be in relationship with that aspect of self,
Yeah.
knowing that it's a gift of you and for the world, maybe, and maybe one of your highest services is to come into and to embrace, um, that aspect. I wonder if what would it be like to give yourself a scaffolded, you know, I'm kind of like feeling out what would be necessary. Like, you know, it can be the biggest thing in the world, but it can also be something approachable, that nice edge. But I wonder what a want would be from that place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, there's a piece of it that is kind of around like what we're doing, right? In sort of exploring this, but it's like this edge of like doing and creating my own thing, right? It's like, so my business is like, I help other people, right? So I have clients and I help them with their money and, you know, kind of coach them and, you know, do things for them to support their vision. And, you know that there is something that I want to create, and it's like, it's swirling around this sort of thing that we're working and discussing. But I haven't really had the power to like say like yes, and I'm going to create it. Right?
So when I hear that, I think about how what I was kind of seeing was like the want is like, so most creatures, their level at which consciousness permeates through them or animates them, limits their ability to almost to like craft reality. They are their evolution, the evolution that's moving them as life, you know, moves through them and evolves, is you know, they're very much carried by it, and we're the same way in many ways. But we also have this ability, I think, to shape our perception of reality, and maybe even sometimes in time have an ability to shape or impact the way our reality is forming around us. I don't know, this I'm kind of blah blahing, but this is the thing I'm feeling is like the want doesn't have to be like the vessel or the end result. I feel like maybe the want is like, where could I use grace in my life now? Or I know this thing is alive in me. My want is to be able to resolve that, or to move into this more. Or it's like very subtle requests, evolutionary requests that invoke involution to come and meet us in very particular areas, still in a deep place of surrender, and even a not knowingness of how or where this is going to go, knowing that like if it is a divine will, that it really won't come from us. We'll have to listen at different levels, I imagine, and hear what we are here to do, or hear what it is that is for us, and then go through our process of responding and acceptance, whatever those things are. But I just feel that the want is like, how can I allow myself a little bit of like compassion or self-love, and name what it is that would ease the process that I find myself in, this evolutionary process, this moving towards something, in a way that actually allows me to come into deeper relationship with the divine or source or the forces of involution that I know are coming and meeting me.
Yeah.
It feels very different than like some of the ways I think about manifestation. And I hear it in some other ways, because those things often feel like, it does feel more like the wants, needs, desires, and there is a sense of potentially having those things be deeply based in fear, or deeply based in, not that fear won't exist in some degree in all ways, but something about this feels like potentially it's not about, it's about finding the ease, not necessarily about, uh, I don't know, like it's not about, it's like, okay, I'll do it. And it'd be really great if I had a really nice computer to do it with. And it's not like, oh, like, it's not about the material as much as it is about um the ability to even ask for the resource necessary to do the thing that's being asked of you. And I don't know, it's just, I named a material object, which means it wasn't quite what I wanted to go for, but it feels, yeah, it feels like something could be different than just the idea of manifesting or being a magician and shaping reality to meet your will. It's like a naming how you would like reality to be in relationship to divine will, and uh, allowing that to be what uh, uh, is the source of the I don't know, manifestation. Yeah. I heard you say that there's a place inside of you that, um where like where the intolerance most like is alive in a way, right? Like you can almost maybe feel it or see it or sense into it, like, oh, this is like this, this is what the intolerance, like it's like a space of intolerance of self, and maybe it manifests in different kind of ways or triggers different types of fears, but there's a sense of that, and I felt that in myself too, like my sense of impatience I can feel in my body. I can feel that, um the fears that come up from that place, but I know that ness. Um, um, and I feel like to sit in that, and then to sit in that as a place of power, um, and then to, um, be in relationship with the, um, divine will, or being in relationship with the ethos that we know. Um, but to feel that that creative force that's coming down to meet us from our willingness to sit in our wounded power, like the power of our fracture, um, and to say from that place of power, uh, what it is that, um, what it is that uh, would either allow us to sit deeper, or um, to relax more into, um, the power and the receptive posture of this, like, um, I I don't know, wounded form. I'm kind of losing it now, but there's something I feel there too about what, yeah, the want still. I'm still trying to play with the want idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't follow everything you said.
perfect.
Um, it's interesting, right? I like this idea of it being you spoke to it kind of being more of like a practice, uh, and a habit, um, as opposed to trying to like maybe like manifest this big grand thing, um, which I think is interesting, right? And I think is the way to work it, right? And so it's like just this process and this practice of continually you know checking in with, like, just kind of continually asking the question, like, what do I desire in this moment? What do I desire in this time and space? And noticing when you're actively sabotaging that, right? Noticing when I'm actively sabotaging, or actively like, or passively like, just repressing, um and uh just not allowing that, right? um it's interesting, right? So like deepening into it, and talking about it and speaking about it and feeling into it, it's like that, this part of self, and it's been present. It's sort of like I sort of took my foot off the gas actually a little bit, but it was about 2 years ago, right around this time in the summer. I did a peyote journey, and this was kind of the piece that was revealed to me, in this visceral way, and it was really intense to experience that. Um, and then I was really actively working it for a while, and kind of eased off, though. But yeah, there's this deep wounded piece of self that's sort of like, his perspective is like, it's kind of like, and it's also this martyr, tied in with my martyrness, right? It's like all the good things in life, like, they're not for me. Like, I can help other people get them. Like, I can help other people like build their vision. I can help other people like have really like, beautiful relationships and amazing things, and like all of these things. But like, there's this sense of like, and that's not for me, right? um, so yeah. um, I, I'm curious if any of this has elucidated, or given you a little bit more of a cogent stream towards yours, if you want to speak to that, or not. We can stay on this.
Um, um, so I'm kind of feeling into this. It's like there's a lot of things that are like that are moving through me. So it's really interesting to try to find like words or try to make it something coherent, because it's very it's that conversion process is kind of challenging, as it requires quite a quick labeling, naming, sense making, and that's I got the tower and the eon. And so I'm just thinking about like this idea that just right now, this time in our lives is like the great change, or they're calling it like the great reboot right now. But it's like, but the overall vibe is the great change,
Control
right?
Alt Delete.
And it's like, so I find myself like presencing to the reality, not just like of my stories or of the societal maps for where to go from here. And actually just taking a second to like be in a tower moment. I mean, I feel like I'm literally in a tower moment right now anyway, like in my life, but it's like going beyond myself and recognizing the tower moment of our time. And with the eon underneath, it's like the eon talks about how we're like, first it was like the feminine, divine feminine, so like Isis, and then it became the divine masculine, which is Osiris. And divine could be, people could say, well, it's very toxic masculine. I'm like, yeah, it's true, right? It went to an extreme, but most civilizations or times that come, they pass because they have a tower moment themselves, right? And so the tower oftentimes it comes from either, I don't know, it doesn't matter, surplus, excess, or lack, and something has to change. And so the third eon, though, this eon we're coming into being that of Horus, so it's the eon of the mental plane. And so the power of thought is really critical here, and the veil between the physical plane and the astral plane and this mental plane are becoming really, really thin. And so the ability to bring thoughts into form in a way could be easier, as long as you know how to manage the movement through the emotions. And I would call the creative process quite an emotional process for myself. So there's some clarity of thought and consistency in thought. There's the creative experience, which is feeling the waves of through time of this, like yeah, I don't know, but it's like not yet physical, and yet you can tangibly know it and touch it, and watch how it moves and shapes and forms, and then bring it into this really physical material reality. um, um, I'm saying these things because it's like, so in myself I go, okay, my vocation is, just using these labels, is patient philanthropy. I'm meant to hold an ethical or a moral code and to invest time, energy, resources into things that align to the highest values that I find myself aligned to, and do it in a way that gives it the time and space that's needed for it actually to be able to grow fruit. And the only way to do that is to convert the energy, the entropic, the potential energy of impatience into patience, to create more patience as I like come into a deeper relationship, I think, with like this the timelessness of my being and my relationship to that experience. And so there's like skillfulness is there. And I think about this idea of the want as a place of practice. You mentioned that already, but I'm saying it again because it's like I can actually use something like wanting and manifesting, not or asking or naming or claiming in conversation with divinity, as like a place to practice one of the most fundamental skills that I need to be able to show up fully in this life. And that is like a full-time job. I feel it in myself, where it's like one, establishing a very good relationship with an ethos, with the thing that I feel like I am here to do, and not externalizing it before I come into my own true relationship with it. So how do I presence myself to my human? How do I presence myself to my own humanity and connect with that? And then allow that to extend outwards, right? The other part was like masterfully grounding visions. And this is the really important aspect too, because it's like, as the startup shaman, I could go out and try to help other people land their visions. But what I really want to do is to bring in what I know into this earth and to see and to grow it. And so I'm trying to start up shaman the vision that I see, not because it's like an egoic act. It's like, it's what I'm in relationship with. And that corruption coming in anytime I come out of a relationship, like one-on-one relationship with the divine, and act from a place that's not source powered, right? And it's really easy to do that because impatience makes me want to go out, and it can so easily confuse what it is that where I act and move from. Am I acting as a conscious through conscious choice in relationship to an ethos, or to like divinity, to a divineness, to at least a higher order principle or set of energies that feel resonant and hopefully that are benevolent. But that's like a little bit too far, but I'm feeling that like the practice of converting the shadow into the energy that allows for us to step into this like life work, life service, divine expression, as the almost like the place where our wants come from, like the reason why I want, or the energy behind the want itself is the process of healing this wound, or converting the shadow into an expression of our higher states of being. And this being done in relationship to source, divinity, or whatever that is. What I really like, the fundamental thing I think I'm saying is like, I think it's critical to know where you're wanting from. The place of wanting, the place at which you name your want, I think matters. The place within yourself. So if I sit in my wound in fear and I want from there, and I do it disconnected from something greater than myself, I feel like that is that feels familiar, and it also feels like it is um it's what I feel, the suffering of that, and I feel the lack of sweetness that comes from that thing even coming about, because it's just, it doesn't um uh it's feeding fear. It's not it's not out turning what is, it's not healing. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, right? But it's like, it's more of like a potential numb or distraction, rather than a a coagulation of the of the in a healing process. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. But I know there's something cool here, and it feels very like secret society esoteric. I'm loving it. Although this is public.
Um,
You hate
yeah,
it.
I mean it's interesting, right? And I think it's like, I don't know, I think there's a subtle difference in that maybe my experience will like help elucidate, because you're talking about that, and it's interesting because it's like, if I sit in my wound and my fear, like that speech is no, I don't want, right? Like there's no wanting there, right?
Huh.
So it's like, for me, it's a different process, right? It's not about like, oh, not like going off my fear once, because like that deep core wound, that fear protection is no, I don't want, right? And so for you, it's like, it sounds like there's something else. There's like, but it's like this, what's the fear? What's what's the fear defense mechanism protecting that wound, right? And so, you spoke, for you, it is there's some out of alignment desire. For me, it's no, I don't want anything, right?
I feel that expression as well, where I won't name any wants or desires, but I do feel them in me. Or I notice that an unwillingness to name it uh, doesn't mean, for me, it's not there. Um, and so I can, I don't know exactly your experience, but that's how I have kind of known what you're talking about, which is like, I'd rather not want anything than to, for me, it's like want something and to feel the pain of the process of um, of not getting it, or to have it come about and realize it's not even the thing that I thought I wanted. Um, and um, yeah, I, as you're talking to, I was thinking about like, in a way, there's a want that's like a statement. It's like, I want this thing. And then I wondered about like maybe it's a question. So to ask something, and then to be able to understand or to receive the response in whatever form it may take, and the question being the form of naming. And so it's more of like an inquiry into the world, instead of a declaration or a statement. And allowing like the responses to inspire action or movement or stillness, whatever that looks like, right? Or the question, the inquiry inspires the next question, and it's like a series of like it feels kind of like Empress Emperor to me in a way, because it's like the Empress is like, I know I sense something, so here's my question to the universe, and I can sit in my power and receive it. And then once I have received what it is that's here, I can kind of emperor it and do something, right? Maybe the question is the penetration. I'm not sure, but like there's whatever. But there's a sense of like uh, a potentially a harmonious relationship to masculine and feminine, or like the yin and yang, and the um, that feels actually hard to differentiate between movement through inspiration and inquiry, because inquiry is almost it's definitely it's an action and it's stepping out, but it's also a deeply receptive form of it. And inspiration in a way is like also, it may be action, but that action in a sense could be a deeply surrendered action. And so you're being moved versus like trying to go out and do something. That inspiration is the energy that's necessary to take the next step comes through the response or answer to the question that's been asked. The resourcing.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's interesting, right? Because what you're talking about is basically the collective unraveling that's currently occurring, right? In that we've seen and are living, the outcome of thousands of years of this overly masculine slanted, without true deep surrendering and inquiry action, right? I want things, right? I want a bigger house. I want, more gold. I want, a faster car, whatever the hell it is that we think we want. We're like, we want that. We don't question that. And we just charge that. And then it's like, it doesn't ultimately satisfy, right? And so then it's like, then we're like, I want more cars and gold and bigger houses and, more room to swing my dick around. Um, and, like, we literally, to the point where like we needed this like interface so much, we put like the embodiment of that in charge of our country. We're like, hey, like, please show us what this is actually like. we want to watch you and see what the fuck this is about. And but yeah, there's this deep surrendering blend with the feminine that is required, right? Because it's like we're not good at actually knowing what is gonna satisfy kind of that deep part of ourselves, right? Like we think we do, right? And it's like, but you look at it, it's like, basically all humans are like pretty bingy and bad with substances. And it's like, it's a scale, but it's like, we're like, oh, I'll have a little bit of alcohol, that'll make me feel good. And then you do it and it's like, well, that doesn't really like fill the hole that I was trying to. So I'll just have another shot until you forget you're trying to fill the hole or whatever happens. but it's like all that stuff, right? And it's like we see that in most people, some sort of like, eating or drugs, or even in like, some people feel it in more positive ways with like exercise, right? Like exercise addiction, work addiction, but like trying to fulfill something. And since we don't ever stop to actually listen, we just keep trying to do more of the same thing. And so, that pattern's unraveling, right? We're unraveling that pattern, here and collectively. Uh, and it's like, yes, it's this yin yang, right? And I don't know where it starts, right? Because the circle doesn't start. Like, it's like, where the hell did we start in this process even, right? Like, you know, uh, but it's this interplay of you have to come back to the allowing allowing yourself to be penetrated, right, by the messages and by the universe.
I, I feel um, the way that from our place um, of like within our wound we find purpose, and in that purpose we have this power that we can sit in, like literally, I think. And in order to, like, and as we move toward the north, because I remember, like, we talked about how these are direction, it wasn't the point itself, but it was actually the movement toward or around, right? So this is west to north. So this is actually the movement that is meant to get us to something, and maybe isn't actually fully um, we may not know what the north stands for, because in some way we're journeying to the north in this in this
Yeah.
moment. And
Yeah.
I think about what I'm noticing here is like, okay, well, a process of maturing or being able to commune with this northern energy is from this place of like taking responsibility for our, like, for for ourselves in a way. It's like, how do you move from adolescence to adulthood? Like, you're supposed to, so not like in our society necessarily, but there's a responsibility that's being taken of your life, and and in that way, the opportunity to orient to something greater than yourself, I think, is also potentially part of responsibility. Maybe, but I think just even having the practice of being with yourself in that wound, and the practice of finding purpose in that aspect of ourselves, and also that the purpose of it maybe potentially in relationship to greater context. But I think being with ourselves is probably a lot in its own right. And I think there's a practice, and that practice is the like inquiry for inspiration, which is like you know, oh, what can I learn about what gift is here for me in this place today, as an example. It's not the best question, but I'm trying to get close to it, right? And there's the ability to kind of sit and listen, or also to continue to move throughout your day and see what comes up for you. Or, you know, where can I be more patient in my life? Or what can I create today in order to become more patient? What can I where am I impatient that I can't see at this moment? And then sitting and listening. But there's this ability to practice being here, to practice practice manifestation, but the manifestation is like in the form of energetic conversion of our wound into purpose. As a process of like healing ourselves, forgiving the parts of ourselves that we have had, you know, the most challenging time within our lives. And in some way, like taking a new level of responsibility for our individual expression in this world. Because I imagine any way that we're denying ourselves or any place where we're acting to avoid feeling our own wound is in some way like has an externality to it, has negative impacts on ourselves and those around us. If anything, it's just hiding our light, as an example of like an expression, right? But it could be a lot more critical than that. So I'm feeling like this like movement, which is like there's something that comes to us, or we sit down and listen. The ethos is a deeply personal and individual relationship to something that is formless, and yet we give it form even just by naming it of itself, but also we give it form by coming into relationship with it as like in a human form or through like some type of a physical tangible manifestation. But I think the body seems really important for me because it's hard in some way for me to with my ethos. Coming into relationship with my body is really important, like, you know, being okay with being human, presencing this human reality. These things are critical. And then moving into this place of like, okay, I'm accepting or I'm recognizing the form, and as I come into this recognition of how this formlessness has come into form, I recognize there's like this wound. There's this void within me. There's this place of just pain and potential. And I'm making a conscious choice to understand the formless in form from this place. And the movement from that almost choice is one of the practice of deepening or healing this relationship with ourselves, with this fracture that happened as this formless came into form, in this like almost to bring us into alignment with another type of form, right? So like the core wound is kind of like this invisible made visible because you can feel it, sense it, know it, it's expressed, but you can't really like, there's no actual wound on me, you know. But it has that invisible quality the ethos has. And I imagine whatever happens in the north, the elder, the North Star, it's just like the form principle, but it's different in some way because it's going to be almost like a it's a same line, different expression. Um, uh, and I think maybe what I heard is like it could be the questions themselves, but I think it may be something like um, uh, the like the uh, it's the formation, it's the forming, it's like it's the it's uh the iterative process of the uh form coming closer and closer to the ethos. So it's like um anyway, I think what I was just trying to get us to is just like I think that there's something really significant about like about practicing from this place and 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 getting good at um practicing purpose from within our wounds. um yeah
Yeah. One sec.
cool.
So I mean, it's interesting, right? Because um, there are a lot of like archetypal things about the North, and like when I, so kind of like allies, guides, elders, all of these pieces. But when I do think of the North, like and how I feel it in my experience of it, of course, it's going to be like the last card. Fourth from last. That's what I feel. It's this shamanic practice of actively facing your death and dying, right? In traditional cultures, this was done in a very literal way, right? Of like going into graves and going into graves and going into crypts and doing ceremony there. But it's like, in some cultures, I think it was maybe the original shamans, right? Like that Siberian tribe, the process of initiation was you went out of, you went out of the village. And for some reason, like in my head, now I'm like, always like, oh yeah, you go north out of the village. I just see them like going north, and you dig your grave. You dig your own grave, and then you lay in it for like a day. And so it's this literal process of dying and being reborn, right? And so it's like there's an element of, in this process, like, I guess the thing we didn't totally touch on, which maybe feels important, but it's like, so it's like all these defense mechanisms, right? Like all of the I don't want, and or I want this instead, or this unconscious, like I'm just gonna like get a bunch of money, or I'm just gonna drink a bunch of alcohol, whatever this, like whatever these patterns in this personality is, that's preventing you from recognizing your power, owning your light. You go into the north and you die. You let that piece die. You recognize, I don't need this shell, and you let it die. And then you come into a new life of a deeper understanding, where some of those patterns and some of those defense mechanisms and some of those shells have fallen away, right? And through that, you're born into your new iteration understanding of your ethos and your purpose. And then you get to do it again, right? And we can do this process many times in a lifetime, right? Or we can do it no times in a lifetime, right? I mean, we'll ultimately do it once. We have to do it once in a lifetime, right? Because you got born, you started the process, and it will finish once. And so there's sort of this like meta thing, which again, like who really knows what's happening on these more etheric levels, but it feels like, it's like that's the process, the life cycle, right? I'm doing this over and over again in our lives, right? And we can speed up the process by doing it several times in a lifetime, right? So maybe you don't have to incarnate and come live so many more. Or again, what's so bad about incarnating and living lives? I don't know what the fuck's happening. But anyway, yeah. And so it's like, it's about, it feels like it's about working that wound, and I think just owning all the bullshit that you've done in your life to protect it, right? You know, and then you can own that, and then you can let it die, right? You can let however much of it you're able to die, right? Yeah, no, I'll stop now. So I mean, I guess just the last piece I'll add, which I didn't add because it felt like a divergence. So I wanted to create space for you to respond to that if you wanted. But the other piece too that I want to name is, I'm pretty sure last week I told the story of Sophia, right?
You mentioned Sophia, but I don't know if you told the actual story.
Did I not tell the story? Okay, well, I'll tell it again. It's a good story. It takes a couple minutes. So I'm almost positive if we watch the recording.
You did. Yeah, you did. But
I did. I'll tell it again. Why the hell not? So in the beginning, right, all was one with God, and then this schism happened, right? And so Sophia finds herself adrift in the void, separated from God, and in pain, right? She's lost her connection to the divine. She's no longer one with divinity. And so she begins searching, right? So she begins searching for God, and she finally sees his light and starts making her way through it. And so eons and eons of traveling and pain and suffering, she finally makes it to this light that is God, that she was searching for. And when she gets there, she discovers that it was not God, but the reflection of God in the deepest, darkest part of the universe, as far away from God as she could possibly be. And so her anguish in that moment of realization is what created the physical world. And so there's a unique individuality to this process, to your ethos. But there's also this collective archetypal being human thing, in that like all of our wounds are ultimately these sort of different manifestations of the same pain, which is the pain of not being God, right? Of being separate. We're like, hey, wait, I was perfect. What what the fuck is going on now? Now I am like separate from God. And there's this like very real existential pain of that. Um, and so it's coming into the realization that you actually are still God. Uh, and that's part of the process. And but yeah, so it's like this wound manifests, infinite different ways, but it's like kind of at the fundamental, it's like this fundamental existential pain of separation from the divine, um, is what we're working.
Yeah, what's coming up for me is like so you kind of come to that place and maybe even recognize what our work is here to do. What does creativity look like at this level of you know? And I have this thing that I think is it's like to want something is very particular, right? To uh to pick, to choose, to look at an archetypal form as a higher expression, in some ways, and to choose to have that be what supports you in this, like to place that in the north, right? And then to allow this process of this work and this practice to be in alignment to that archetypal form, because it's almost non-reachable, right? But it gives you like these values and these principles or these styles or this sense of a higher order form that you're able to be in relationship with in some way, as you're moving towards your ethos. And I just feel like, to dream of something. Like a vision is oftentimes, it's like a vision statement, and it's like very like practical and like very like they're not very inspiring oftentimes, in my opinion. They're more like a statement of intent or something like that, but it doesn't like, I don't see it.
We're going to sell lots of products to lots of people.
You're, and so I think about choosing that. Like if I had a vision of myself, my higher self may manifest, or if I had a vision of if I try to be in relationship with my higher self, that I believe comes through as I'm doing this work, right? The bear was so aggressive and like kind of scary looking, like the great bear, right? But it was like, if you're gonna come in here, you better know what you're here to do, right? Because this is like, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'll eat you if you don't know what you want to accomplish, So to face that thing, you have to be really, really certain that what you're going to, I think you have to be in relationship to what the possibility of what's on the other side. And that comes to this practice. But also I think there's something about the future that you imagine. And I think there's something, when I think about what I want to dream, or how I want to use a vision to motivate myself, or to understand the principles in a more embodied way. I think there's another place for that, for the archetypes to come into play here, in some way. So it's like this round is my queen round, and I'm really coming into relationship with my queenness, right? And so whenever anything's coming up or going on, I can always like remember those qualities of like queen, or like this is my wanderer phase. And so I'm working at this wound, and I'm in this practice from the place of the wanderer. It's like, well, you know what, it's all pretty transient. Or like every place is my home, or like I only need so much, my backpack, whatever the qualities are that are there. And there's a willingness to even allow that archetype to be what dies in the process for us. That aspect of our wholeness embodied in a form as an archetype that isn't
Well,
necessarily uh-huh.
it would be your spectral interpretation and engagement of the archetype would be what would die.
Love that. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe an entire spectrum could be complete. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, we were talking about spectrums on the Gene Keys call too, which is like just how I don't know. We're talking about the autism spectrum. I have a guy I went to school with who's coming. He's gonna fly into Denver, and we're supposed to meet up. And then he wants to do a plant medicine ceremony. So it was like maybe a cannabis or psilocybin, and wants me to sit for him. And it's happening really rapidly. He just asked me like 3 days ago. I was like, hey, I bought a ticket. I'll be there next weekend. I was like, well, okay, let me catch myself really quickly, because I don't know that I know. This is very new for me right now. Not necessarily the sitting part, but the way in which it's coming about. And he's on the spectrum, and he wants to support others through therapy work, psychedelic therapy work, who are also on the spectrum, so that he's orienting toward bringing this type of work to people on the spectrum in different parts of the spectrum. And it's I'm very I bring that up because I think about how for someone like the autism spectrum is a very real thing, but it's also like it's a way of interpreting a type of a form, the way these beings have incarnated into form, and we put them on a spectrum based off of certain capacities or qualities of them. And I just really wonder about what happens in a space that is formless, like in a ceremonial space. The form is still very important, but there's a sense there's a different type of relationship that's there, where like social cues or you know you're you're operating from a different part of your being. And I'm kind of fascinated and to understand that aspect of myself. So like where I am on the spectrum, because I feel that sometimes, and also what it's like to be engaged in the ceremonial space with a high functioning individual on the spectrum, holding the greater context that he feels that this may be the work he wants to do in the world as well. And spectrums, but also moving beyond the spectrum, or like something like that. Like that's kind of why that came up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're all somewhere on every spectrum. And yeah, part of the process is letting go of the labels of those spectrums. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you brought back in the archetypes too, because like archetypally, they would live in the north. So it's interesting, you know, we bring them in the south. We brought them in the south. I don't know. It seems like they're kind of pretty necessary there.
Mm-hmm. And they feel different in a way because it's like there's something ephemeral or possible, I feel, in the north. Something like it's kind of it feels distant to me for some reason. I'm not sure why. It feels like an elder. An elder is someone like they're just humans that possibly, but there's a sense of distance, or there's a sense of like um, uh, being of a higher order that that I just sense. So I think about the way that like a form, like a literal form, like if we said, okay, this is a software product as an example, um, it the almost the archetype itself is almost, or it's gonna be a table, and then you put the table into a very particular type of table. And so the archetype is almost like the thing experiencing the wounding, although you use the archetype in order to even go in the process. And then in the north, you're able to almost bring it back to its a more whole state because you're not necessarily trying to bring it into something like that. You're actually kind of expanding back out as like an ideal or something that we can learn from in this process of um, of um, healing, transformation, transmutation, creativity. I'm not sure, but these acts that we're of taking responsibility for our inner world as a as we um, you know yeah,
I think I've got a good metaphor for it.
get it.
I think it's more like, you know, like a developmental cycle, right? If you look at it like as a child in the South, it's like imprinting, right? It's kind of like who are you seeing that's like imprinting you and like, you know, showing you how to walk in the world. And then that causes a bunch of wounds. But then you go into the north and then that's in the process of becoming an adult and you more get to decide, okay, who do I actually want to be, right? And this really stronger sense of self differentiation, um, and owning self.
So it's 12:02.
Huh?
It's been 2 hours. Do you wanna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's something
Uh,
uh there's one I feel like there's some last piece with the archetypes. Um
a choice.
which is, well, it's like uh you know, and I think the archetypes we kind of drew in the cards and kind of discussed in the South were like the it was like the queen and the prince, I believe.
It was queen, and then the knight and the prince were present for like two of our conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. But so, you know, so sort of this idea of, you know, this masculine, feminine, um, and how that shows up in a balance of, uh, we talked about it in a balance of structure and surrender.
That was good. Okay, sorry.
um, and so it's like if we're coming into the north, is there a way that our wounding process has revealed a deeper way of connecting with those archetypes? And we did actually touch on this a little bit, uh, of it's not so much structure and surrender as we actually came to a slightly more or slightly deeper understanding of that, is it's like it's allowing universal penetration and then uh and then refined action based upon that, and this yin yang, this spiral of that. um but it's like, but it's surrendering, like, and I guess in the South we talked about it, we're like, okay, like surrender, like we'll just let whatever happens happen, right? Like, and that was like our interpretation of it, our interpretation of the feminine, just like lie there and take it, right? Right. That's a pretty uh old paradigm of the feminine. But there's this like much deeper, much deeper potentiality of it, of it's an active divine surrendering, or active surrendering to divine penetration, right? Really intentionally intentionally uh, creating the space to allow that divine inspiration to come through and allow yourself to receive that. Um, and then the the king just showed up, right? And then this, kind of taking ownership um, of yourself and really creating in a conscious way, right? And sort of the like, it's the less, we talked about it, the prince, the less evolved masculine is much more likely to kind of go out and just act on whim and act from desires, and right, go get drunk and party and want lots of money and sports cars and things like that. And we're stepping out of that into the kingness. I don't know, is there anything you want to say on that?
I think what's coming up for me is like, well, you mentioned like the spectrum, and in some way you could imagine the North being the spectrum being the expressions of like what it means to be a queen, or you could say I'm actually gonna have like a spectrum based on like archetypal polarities. So if I'm in my king, I'm in my shaman, and this is like the energies. This is the container in which I'm experiencing or navigating through. I'm able to both, embody and explore and express both those both those archetypes within myself. And so there's like a dynamicness to this like polarity and that container it creates. So the shaman may actually be more of the uh, receptive expression, even though it has a masculine flavor to it. And it's going to go out and have these conversations with, other worlds and multi-dimensionals and this kind of thing going on. Whereas the king, um, who's still in the same container, still in the same spectrum, is going to have his relationship probably be more like externalized. So family, people, and so you have this ability to be in your power, to be in a masculine form of power, expressed two different ways, and to find yourself in that spectrum of an archetypal polarities, not so much like north to south polarity necessarily, right? But even the polarity between north and west obviously is full of uh, exploration. There's so much to find there, and so that felt kind of interesting too, because I was doing those polarity readings. It kind of just came as I was starting to kind of get into tarot, and it makes it make sense in a way that it didn't. It was like um, to me, to pick just one archetype is a beautiful commitment, but that's kind of what happens when you um, to get to understand yourself in the context of an archetypal spectrum, or by creating the room or space to even yeah, I think it makes sense, right? Just the king and the
Yeah.
shaman as a spectrum that you're operating on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when you're operating on those spectrums, it's really important to hold the tension, hold the polarity,
exactly.
right? Because then when they come into the middle, then it's just bleh. It's just the totally neutralized nothingness. Cool. Yeah, anything else coming up for you that you want to speak into the space before we move to closing?
No, just look at the cards to see if anything needs to be read. I don't know. We'll see. So I'll check out with that if I do want to do that.
Cool. You want me to check out? You want to go?
You go first.
Yeah. Transition.
Uh-huh.
I'm sailing away. um, yeah. This was pretty intense. Um, I'm really recognizing and appreciating what a powerful and intense process this is. Um, and uh, and really beautiful. And it's like we're like human being. We're such like complicated, tricky little fuckers. There's like, it's all these little patterns and ropes and hiding. And so it's been really interesting to be in it and with it. And I can see why we just splashed around in the east and the south for so long. Because going into the west was not easy. But it was good. I got this flash of like, it'll be fun to have this as a like an archive, and something we can point to, right? And I mean, this is story, so like, who the fuck knows? But it's just it was fun to think about, like, okay, maybe in like 10 or 20 years, we're like, we've really got this process down, and we're like rocking it. But we can still be like, hey, like, go back to 2020,
Huh?
and like you could see, like we were not so good at it, right? Like we had to like figure it out just like anyone else. And so I think it'll be fun just to see how it evolves, and who knows if that story comes to pass or not, and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's my checkout.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of joy from that share. It's interesting. Like meeting once a week for 2 hours could feel like it wouldn't be sufficient, and yet I feel like it is just a right amount of time. It gives some time and space for things to process and to, for me, I'm recognizing how much, even how my life is unfolding in the gap times is both informing and informed by these conversations. And so again, it's like that relationship to like the receptivity or the surrender in the process, in a way that's it's like less obvious, because it's almost asked me to hold off on too much story or too much meaning making until the things that I'm experiencing begin to actually make meaning. It's a little bit different. So, all right. Let's see. So we've got the cave. The dark, the portal, the interior. Those who are fortunate enough to find and enter the cave are forever changed. It is a place of potent power, acting both as portal to another realm and a space for sacred ritual and initiation. The cave is a place to return for meaningful retreat, where one can see the true self in the darkness. In esoteric teachings, the cave is known to reside in the center of the heart. Within its walls, the whispers of compassion and self-understanding can be heard. Yet because of its mystery and power, many of us fear the cave and never try to find it. We busy ourselves in the bright lights of the city, while the cavernous and dimly lit chambers call out to us in the night. Where is your cave? You already know. Return to it and tend the fire. When light, the sacred center within. When dark, withdrawal, isolation, and hiding. I want to do, just in honor of the North, so we have the cave and we have Anima Mundi. The soul of the world, all that is. Anima Mundi epitomizes the principle, accept all, reject none. Simply put, it is the living soul of the world in all its multifaceted, multidimensional layers, bonded together by loving cosmic forces. Diversity is celebrated, multiplicity is honored, and nothing is denied embrace. Constructs of separation dissipate into the wonderful mess of shared consciousness. Anima Mundi is the link between the literal and the imaginal, the rational and the mythic. It is the connective fiber that makes life meaningful. This card indicates an initiation on the level of the soul. You will awaken the unique light within and witness how this light contributes to the radiance of the entire universe. You will sense yourself as a critical note in the cosmic orchestra. Destiny is altered as you hear the enchanted melody of all living things. When light, tending to the sacred details of life. When dark, overwhelmed by the bigness of existence. So,
did you like pull that one, or did you like specifically choose that one?
Oh, I did the polarity, so I read the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
I shuffled in top and bottom, yeah. So it's
those seem very, very northern cards.
and I feel like they're also feedback, like I received feedback from them about what has happened on this call and where we're at in our process, right? It's like okay, yeah, now you know, and you've come to that conclusion through your own dialogue and discourse, and this is what is here now. This willingness or not to come into the cave and to hold ceremony and space within your heart, and to tend that fire, and while also feeling the sacredness of the allness. And so there's like this, like I don't know, I can feel that, and they both said initiations, and both had this like sacred rite ritual to them, and it's like, okay. So I feel like it's like homework, but also a testament or feedback to what it is that we have approached, are approaching in the way that we continue to move toward it. Yeah.
Can I respond really quickly?
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, there's also a really beautiful polarity there, right? And that the cave is like deeply personal. So it's like, it's deeply personal and universal at the same time, right? What we're doing.
Transpersonal sovereignty. Yeah.
Aho. You feel complete?
I'm complete. It's good.
Cool.
You?
Yeah.